I almost burned this jersey this morning when I first heard the news. Not that the news surprised me, but the Cleveland Browns don't deserve Shedeur Sanders. Now comes news, not surprising. I predicted from the start that Deshaun Watson will start, and it's not a week-to-week thing, that he has been given the job for the season by the Cleveland Browns. This sorry-ass franchise does not deserve to have Shedeur Sanders on its roster anymore. I wish there were some way that Jimmy Haslam and Todd Monken would decide as we near the season to get rid of Shedeur, to set him free, to trade him elsewhere, and I'm sure nobody would give anything more than what they gave for Shedeur, a 5th-round pick, 6th round, 7th round, I don't know, I don't care. Would I love to see Shedeur in Atlanta? Do I think Shedeur Sanders, this coming football season, could win more games?
Nobody saw this coming. Not the fans in Cleveland, not the guys inside the Browns building, and definitely not Shedeur Sanders himself. Because one decision just blew the whole thing wide open. A decision so cold, so calculated, that even the loudest voice in sports media couldn't stay quiet. Skip Bayless didn't just disagree, he said the Browns don't even deserve Shedeur Sanders anymore. But what he said next exposed something so ugly, so rigged, that Cleveland football may never look the same. Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why so many people believe this quarterback battle was over before it ever started. And once you hear the full story, you may never look at this Cleveland front office the same way again.
I want to see Shedeur get a chance with somebody who wanted him, and I'm calling big baloney on that video that the Cleveland Browns released, courtesy of their videographer who followed Shedeur in. Remember the first day when he introduced himself to Todd Monken in Monken's new office as the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Remember that video? We debated it on Gridiron. Some of the other guys, I think Akib said, hey, that's a good sign, because Monken said, hey, man, how are you? Good to meet you, because, hey, we really wanted you in Baltimore. Baloney. They wanted him in Baltimore. They did try. Ozzie Newsome did call Deion Sanders to see if they could take Shedeur early in the 5th round, just before the Cleveland Browns took him in the 5th round. Baloney, Todd Monken. Yeah, we wanted you. I could just see old Todd standing on the table to campaign. We got to take Shedeur and the...
It happened fast. No big press conference, no dramatic build-up, just a quiet announcement from the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson is QB1, not for a week, for the season. And almost instantly, the internet caught fire, because everybody already knew what this meant for Shedeur Sanders, the kid who fought his way onto an NFL roster in the 5th round, the kid who started games last year with basically nothing around him. Benched. Again. And this time, it wasn't framed as a competition. It was framed as a done deal. No week to week, no we'll evaluate, just a decision handed down from the top. For a franchise that just finished a 5-12 season, that kind of certainty raised eyebrows across the league. Because usually, when a team struggles that badly, everything is supposed to be on the table. Every job, every starter, every assumption. But not this one. This one was locked in before the paint even dried on training camp. Skip Bayless didn't hold back. He said he almost burned his own Shedeur Sanders jersey the morning he heard the news. Not because he was shocked, because he saw it coming from a mile away. This sorry franchise, he said, does not deserve to have Shedeur Sanders on its roster anymore. That's not a hot take. That's a man watching a talented young quarterback get buried and refusing to stay silent about it. And here's the thing, Bayless isn't some new fan jumping on a bandwagon. He says he's been on board with Shedeur since Colorado, since Game 1, since before most of the country even knew the name. So when a guy like that says get him out, you know it's coming from somewhere real.
This competition this year was so rigged that Shedeur was stuck with playing with backups, with third stringers and fourth stringers, some off the roster. There was one, he threw one pass to a tight end who wasn't ranked in the top 4. He wasn't listed on the depth chart in the top 4 tight ends on the Cleveland Browns this year as they continue to rebuild. He didn't get to play with Concepcion or Denzel Boston, the 2 fairly high pick receivers that Deshaun did get to play with in his first preseason start, and he was the starter from the start. It was rigged. I want to see Shedeur get a chance with somebody who wanted him, and I'm calling big baloney.
Here's where things get crazy, because according to Bayless, this so-called quarterback battle was never a real battle at all. Shedeur was surrounded by backups, third stringers, guys not even ranked on the depth chart. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson got the real weapons in his very first preseason start, the new receivers, the real starters. Think about that for a second. One quarterback got the varsity squad, the other got leftovers, and people are still asking why Shedeur didn't win the job? You can't lose a fair fight if the fight was never fair to begin with. Picture it, one quarterback throwing to a tight end who wasn't even ranked in the top 4 on the depth chart, the other one throwing to the 2 receivers Cleveland just spent real draft capital on. That's not a competition, that's a coronation with extra steps. Remember that feel-good video the Browns released? The one where Todd Monken shakes Shedeur's hand and says, "We really wanted you"? Bayless is calling it exactly what it is. Baloney, because everyone in that building knew the truth. Cleveland's front office reportedly tried to get Shedeur in the 5th round before Cleveland even had the pick. That warm welcome video, just a story for the cameras. The real story was already being written behind closed doors, long before that handshake ever happened.
He gave Deshaun Watson a 5-year, $230 million contract guaranteed. It's the worst contract in the history of pro football. So this year, as Deshaun finally got healthy, coming off 2 Achilles reattachments, twice he's had the Achilles reattached, and then he had the big shoulder surgery on his throwing shoulder. And so over the last 5 years now, Deshaun Watson has played 19 games in 5 years because he's been hurt. He's also just been a basket case because obviously the Cleveland Browns gave him, Jimmy Haslam and wife, gave him that contract after he had been accused by 24 women in Houston, Texas, of sexual assault and obviously inappropriate conduct, massage therapists. 2 Texas grand juries, had declined to pursue criminal charges.
Now pay attention to this. Bayless didn't just blame the front office, he put it on Todd Monken directly. 14 coaching jobs, 14 stops in this business. A guy fully wired into football's old boy network. The same network, Bayless says, that never truly wanted Shedeur Sanders in the building. Deion Sanders showed up to training camp just to talk about his son. A father who's coached that kid since he was 5 years old, and instead of being welcomed, it was treated like an intrusion, like an outsider stepping onto territory he had no business touching. That's not coaching, that's ego protecting ego. Here's where the whole narrative falls apart. Cleveland gave Deshaun Watson a 5-year, $230 million fully guaranteed contract, one of the worst contracts in NFL history. Since signing it, Watson has played just 19 games in 5 years. 19 in 5 years. 2 Achilles reattachments, shoulder surgery, suspension, a $5 million fine. And now, with his QBR sitting at a number that would rank dead last in the league if it qualified, ownership is doubling down, starting him anyway. Why? Because admitting the mistake is harder than protecting it. Because if Watson fails again, the front office fails with him, and nobody wants to be the one who signs off on that. Owner Jimmy Haslam took years of criticism for that contract, deserved criticism, and now with Watson finally healthy enough to suit up, this might be viewed as his last shot at proving the deal wasn't a total disaster. But here's the problem with that plan. It puts an entire franchise's future on the health of a quarterback who's played 19 games in 5 years. 19 games and 2 Achilles surgeries later.
and the front office is still betting the season on him.
But the biggest reason people have booed Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, Ohio, is simply because he's been so bad. His QBR in the games that he has played for the Cleveland Browns is 33. It doesn't qualify, but if it did, over that stretch, he'd be dead last in the league. They're booing because he was awful. They're booing because they're cheering for Shedeur. They're not so much booing Deshaun at this point. It's not that everything's forgotten or forgiven or whatever. It's just so long ago. The booing now, the emotion now is generated mostly because they're actually cheering for Shedeur. Because, again, as people know, I'm the biggest Shedeur fan. And there are a bunch of Shedeur fans, but I don't know anyone bigger than me. And I have been on board with it. I'm wasn't a Johnny-come-lately to this. I was on board from game 1, 2, 3 in Colorado. Heck, I was on board.
That's not even the most shocking part. Last season, buried behind the worst offensive line and the worst receiving core in professional football, Shedeur Sanders still found a way to win. He beat Joe Burrow. He beat Aaron Rodgers. He won on the road at Las Vegas with almost nothing around him. No real protection, no real weapons, just a rookie fifth-round pick finding a way. And somehow that wasn't enough to earn him the starting job this year. Now here's a stat that should stop you cold. Shedeur Sanders' jersey was the 5th highest selling jersey in the entire NFL last season, ahead of MVP caliber starters, ahead of franchise quarterbacks. The most popular backup quarterback in NFL history in Cleveland still won't hand him the keys. Fans in the stadium are booing, but according to Bayless, they're not really booing Deshaun Watson anymore. They're booing the decision. They're cheering for Shedeur. Every time his name gets chanted, it's a reminder of what this franchise refuses to see.
Where somebody is enlightened enough to say, you know what, Shedeur could really be good if we gave him an opportunity. He really could. You want to talk about a diamond in the Cleveland rough right now? He is a diamond waiting for somebody to see him way down in the deep grass in Cleveland, down in the mud in Cleveland, Ohio. There's a diamond. Let's take him. We can steal him right now. We could get him for virtually nothing. Doesn't make any money. We don't really have to spend a high pick on him. And all he would do is turn around a franchise. All he would do for the Atlanta Falcons is put them back on the national map. They are loaded with talent. Obviously, I love their skill talent. I like their defense. I love their division they're in. I'm a Baker fan, but still, I like Bryce Young, and I like Baker, but are they invincible?
And this is where Bayless dropped the boldest claim of all. He said Shedeur Sanders right now, today, could win more games than either quarterback currently competing for the job in Atlanta. Give him a rebuilt offensive line. Give him real receivers. Give him one team, one city that actually wants him. Bayless called him a diamond buried in the mud in Cleveland, just waiting for somebody smart enough to see it. A young man with the poise, the accuracy, and the toughness to turn a franchise around if somebody would just give him the chance. Remember what he went through at Colorado, 2 years behind an offensive line that couldn't protect him, hit after hit, game after game, and he never blinked, he never asked out, he just kept getting back up. That's not the profile of a bust, that's the profile of a competitor waiting for the right opportunity to finally show what he can really do. So here's where we're left. A young quarterback who beat playoff-tested veterans with nothing around him, a front office protecting a $230 million decision instead of admitted it failed, and a fan base that keeps chanting one name every single week, and it's not the one starting. Whether you love Shedeur Sanders or you don't, one thing is becoming impossible to ignore. Every single time they try to bury him, he gives people a reason to believe again. And in this league, that might be the most dangerous thing a young quarterback can be. Cleveland has a decision to make. The only question left is whether they'll make it before it's too late, or whether some other team, some other city is about to steal the diamond nobody else was willing to see. If you think Shedeur Sanders deserves better than this, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this story is far from over, and you won't want to miss what happens next.